The gig is up, the news is out, they finally found me. Jerome Rivera doesn't want to lose 4 in a row, and that's all I'm going to sing, Matt.
Wow.
This weekend, we have the Renegade, Jerome Rivera. He's taking on Zhalgas Zhumagulov, and if you're playing at home and you want a good Scrabble one, throw that tongue twister into the board. You're going to get a lot of points, and for Kazakhstan, Zhalgas Zhumagulov, this guy's been posted up at American Top Team for a little bit. I mean, I saw a picture on the IG when we were getting ready for Shavkat Rakhmonov's last fight against Michel Plessis that he had Sergey Morozov and Zhalgas Zhumagulov. Now, it's a little bit different because for Rakhmonov, he was training over at Sanford MMA, and just down the road was Zhumagulov. The last time I was there, I think it was, 15 minutes, 20 minutes? You weren't there with me, but the gyms aren't very far apart. So
Sanford's got a new facility, though.
And that's true, but overall, we're talking about Florida. It's not that far away. So, you've got Zhalgas Zhumagulov, a guy who had tons of success before he came into the UFC, former Fight Nights Global flyweight champ. He had a big win over Ali Bagautinov, who, the guy fought for the flyweight title in the UFC. For Jerome Rivera, we talked about it earlier with Yaozong. The guy started off in the UFC in a really tough weight class at heavyweight, then at light heavyweight, now at middleweight. For Jerome Rivera, 135, 125, 145. In the fight against Ode Osborne, it wasn't originally supposed to be at 45, but it was a short notice type of affair. And it's kind of funny because both guys have eyes at 125. Sure. But for Jerome Rivera, lose to Tyson Am, lose to Francisco Figueiredo, and then lose his last time out against, again, a really tough out in the man himself, Ode Osborne. So we're trying to get it right. We're trying to go back down to 125. He lost to Francisco Figueiredo here. Does he have a good shot against Zhalgas Zhumagulov? Because the odds are definitely stacked against him.
Well, here's the thing, because Zhalgas should be better than he is. Let's just be honest. Zhalgas, we had pretty high hopes for when he came into the UFC. When you look at his body of work, at least before he came to the UFC, there's a pretty good fighter there. He's got a unique sense of striking. He's got decent cardio, but trust me, it's in question now. And there was a lot to like, I should say, about his overall body of work up until he did come to the UFC. But over his last 2 fights, I've been pretty disappointed. I know the Paiva fight was pretty close. It was a competitive fight, but he didn't look good against Albazi whatsoever. And it really depends on where you want to put Amir Albazi. If you do think he is like that next top tier contender or not, or if you just think, hey, he's a good prospect, but that's about it. But Zhalgas did not look good in that fight, and it was a weird fight because we talk about, and this fight should be kind of one of those clash of styles, to quote the great Mike Goldberg, but I look at Jerome Rivera, and the story, at least, of him coming into the UFC was that you gotta watch out. On the mat, he is tricky. If he's on top, if he's on bottom, it really doesn't matter. He's one of those guys who can get it done no matter what. And the weird thing about Rivera is that, if anything, he's been able to show that he's got decent cardio in the UFC. I know he got stopped quick against Ode Osborne, but in the Figueiredo fight, you have to remember, he was the one putting it on Figueiredo at the end of that fight. I know he was getting out-grappled throughout the majority of it, but as that fight wore on, he does have decent cardio, and he is a guy who, if you don't get out of there early, and if you don't finish him, he is just going to keep on wearing on you over and over and over again. And this will be an interesting fight because of the forward pressure of Jerome Rivera, along with the questionable power of Zhalgas. And I guess I'll let you talk a little bit more about this because in my mind's eye, again, I think about Zhalgas as this really good one-punch knockout power. He can hit you with kicks, he can hit you with punches, but I don't really know if he has the type of power that can stop a guy like Jerome Rivera with just one shot.
With Zhumagulov, I would expect what he's worked on is to try and throw a little bit more volume because he's very centered around single shots. It might be a hook. It might be a left cross if he's working from southpaw. That's the other thing. He can switch between the stances. Jerome Rivera, you're going to see primarily out of southpaw, really long jab, really nice high kick. But for Jerome Rivera, he is at such an advantage in terms of height. He's 5'10", and he's going to weigh 125 pounds. I'm 5'11". I couldn't even
on
worry.
A tall day.
I couldn't worry. 125 pounds. I'm thin. 125 pounds. That's insane. So for Jerome Rivera, we'll see how the weight cut goes. He made it against Francisco Figueiredo, and it worked out there. For both these guys, they have really high-level fights. I mean, if you look at it for Rivera, he had that weird stumbling block, and you can go back into one of our videos to really kind of dive deep into Jerome Rivera's past. But he lost to Roberto Sanchez. That was Sanchez's ticket to the UFC. Then he lost to Brandon Royval where he fell back and he got hurt. It was a really disgusting injury. He had to kind of build back up. He beats Luis Rodriguez in Contender Series 2020, then loses to Tyson Am because Tyson Am is a buzzsaw for prospects. For Zhalgas Zhumagulov, he has a win over Tagir Ulanbekov, which just continues to look better from 2018. Then the win over Bagautinov, and then he ends up, of course, in the UFC to lose to Raulian Paiva in a close fight, and then to lose to Amir Albazi. So, again, You know that Zhumagulov is going to mix it up with the wrestling. He has so far in the UFC. 57% of the time he strikes. 42% he goes for a takedown. The other 1%, he just kind of screws off and lets his cardio kind of fall a little bit. For Jerome Rivera, he's been forced to strike the entire time, and he's lost every fight. So it is really tricky. It's going to be the pressure of Zhumagulov. We're going to see if there's going to be any kind of defensive shots from Rivera, if he's able to land something off his back. Tapology votes, 1,361 of them. 88% Zhumagulov, 82% by decision. For the 12% that have Rivera, let's make it fun. 54% by decision. Zhumagulov, the second biggest favorite on this card behind Sugar Sean O'Malley. Open to minus 400. He's minus 365 right now for Rivera. Open to plus 300. He's plus 277. So to answer all the questions, Matt, the fans have Zhumagulov. The odds have Zhumagulov. Both guys have been inconsistent in the UFC. One guy's lost 3 fights. One guy's lost 2. I like Zhalgas Zhumagulov for the parts of his game. He's going to be at a huge height and reach disadvantage in this fight, but I still do like the forward pressure. If he's able to wrestle and stay on top and work his ground and pound.
No, don't wrestle at all.
We saw him do before he came into the UFC. I like Zhumagulov in this fight.
For Zhalgas, why would you wrestle though? Like, you're the better striker. I know you're only going to be throwing single shots, but why mess around with the grappling at all of Rivera? I just don't think it would be worth it. For Zhumagulov, I think he can defend a lot of the takedowns from Rivera, and I do think he can keep this fight standing and just win rounds on the feet throughout this one. I do like Zhalgas in this fight.
It should be a very, very interesting one. I mean, from Jerome Rivera, we've seen 0% on his takedown accuracy, 0% that he's averaged, and 40% takedown defense. So it hasn't been good so far. Maybe this is the fight to right the ship. We've seen a lot of fighters recently on 3-fight losing streaks able to buck that trend. I mean, Alessio Di Chirico's one that comes to mind, but it is a very interesting fight in an ever-changing flyweight division. I'm going with Kazakhstan, Zhalgas Zhumagulov. You're in agreement here. It is one hell of a fight card coming up this week, and you're not going to want to miss the rest of the video. So keep locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say, let's get into it.